the Primitive Patterns Podcast. It's time to live your mystery. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Primitive Patterns Podcast. Today, we're joined by fellow Canadian, fellow Collingwood boy. We actually just found out when he hopped on, he said he's in the Dominican, and the last place I was thinking he was going to say he was from was Collingwood, but there we go. Nick Murray, we've been following him for a little bit now. Really interested in kind of what he's all about and what he's doing. We're really aligned with what he's doing. We think it's really cool. He's the founder of Wakewell, a mushroom supplement company, and they do some clinical retreats out in Jamaica, which also look super cool, but I'll let Nick get into it. So Nick, how you doing? And if we could start with maybe just explaining to the audience who you are and what you're all about.
Fellas, great to meet you both. Nick Murray, founder, CEO of Wake Network. And for the last 5 years, we've been working in the psychedelic mushroom space, as well as the functional mushroom space, working to really expand access. That's really been our goal, is to make mushrooms, functional and psychedelic, the first line of treatment for people, for mind and body. And it's been one heck of a ride. We've worked with a lot of different people, from practitioners to patients, a lot of athletes, a lot of veterans. They've come to our retreats in Jamaica, in the British Virgin Islands, and soon to be Colorado. So we've had really interesting ride on this wake journey.
Unreal. So how did it all start? Obviously you grew up in an Ontario kid, and then next thing you know, you're running clinical psilocybin based retreats. I would love to just hear a little bit about the journey, how it all came to be what it is now.
Yeah, it all started, I've always been I've always been a geek, and I've always been kind of a hippie. And so when you put those together, I wanted to bring this new but old medicine to people in a trusted format, and that trusted format is where the tech side of things comes in. So I was working on one of my last tech companies, and we were being used to do clinical research for cannabis, medical cannabis. And so I started seeing the power, and this was over 10 years ago now, the power of cannabis to help people both with mind and body issues. And then when I started seeing psychedelics come around 6 years ago, I knew that we could either, be the tech provider like we had been for medical cannabis, or we could be even more immersed and actually be touching, the substance, really a part of the patient's journey rather than just the tech side of things. So that took me to Jamaica, and met an amazing couple that had a mushroom farm already, and we made a partnership. We decided to do our first clinical retreat in Jamaica at this beautiful place called Good Hope. And we did it. And we had Matt Barnes, who's an amazing photographer, and his team come down from Toronto, got an amazing amount of footage, and then COVID, literally COVID, as we were doing the retreat. And so 5 of us stayed, everybody else left. And then it was well, we're not going to do retreats anymore. We're going to focus on growing the mushrooms. And so that was pretty much the quick and dirty of how we got into it, and how we transitioned from just being mostly let's do clinical retreats in Jamaica to let's do the farm. And we built a massive farm down in Jamaica. And now we're expanding our retreat locations to onshore, and we'll be opening up in Colorado in June.
Beautiful. I would love to know, when someone joins one of your retreats, what does that look like from start to finish? Firstly, what's the typical person that comes, and then what is the week or however long does it look like? Who's there facilitating? Just give me the all around of what goes on at a week with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So people apply online, and they fill out an intake. Our medical team reviews it, has a conversation with them. We don't approve everybody. It's, we take it really seriously, and depending on where people are at on their journey, we give a yay or a nay, unfortunately. And usually the nay is just not right now. And they come back later. And then they do group intro. So we do a nice secure Signal or Telegram chat with everybody that's going to be on the retreat with the medical team. They get to know everybody virtually. And then we go through the itinerary, and once they land, everything's all inclusive. So we basically pick them up directly from the airport. We shuttle them to the location, and then they get an intro. They get a walkthrough of the facilities, and they get to meet everybody in person that they've met virtually. And then we have a dinner, and we break bread together, and everybody has kind of a nice early night, because the next 3 days are pretty intense. So the next morning, everybody's up at 7:30, and we do yoga, breathwork, meditation at 8. And then that's followed by light breakfast. And we do a lot of dietary restriction planning prior. So everybody kind of has the diet that's suitable for them or best for them. And then usually day 2 is our first dose. Sometimes we do a 5-day where there's a gap day, but day 2, they get ready. We do medical in the morning. So that's an EEG scan. We see where their brain levels are, their brain wave levels. And then we do a blood pressure, heart rate, pulse oximetry. And depending on the team, if they're interested, we do have a smart shirt that also does ECG. So we're getting the electrocardiogram as well. And then we discuss one-on-one where their comfort level is with the psychedelics, if they've tried psilocybin before, if they're on any medication at the current time, specifically SSRIs or SNRIs, antidepressants. It's not a toxicology risk, but it's you're going to need some more, basically, if you're on either of those. And that's where the dose is decided. So it's between our medical provider as well as the guest, the patient themselves. They really discuss where their comfort level is. So everybody's getting a personalized dose. And then we have some sound therapy to kind of promote particular brainwave states. So we're really hoping to get the person into an alpha state, which is a nice relaxed state prior to. So we use some binaural audio for that. So everybody has kind of a peaceful onboarding into the actual ceremony space where they'll be listening to some audio in headphones. And then depending on if they want to be tracked during the journey, so we have that smart shirt again, we can track their vitals during the journey if they want to wear the smart shirt. It's super non-invasive. It's just basically, like a tank top that has the technology all integrated, no wires, so they can walk around. It's got a 30-hour battery as well, so if they want to monitor their sleep after the experience, they can just leave it on. And then the show starts, so to speak. So usually the show starts around 1:00. We want to be early enough that they come out for sunset, but not too early that they're going to have like the hottest time of the day, which is 1. So we kind of try and back it up as much as possible. We go outside as much as we can, obviously weather permitting, and we use both live and recorded audio. And then we have medical staff. That's both nursing or doctor, as well as mental health. So that's a therapist or psychologist, always on site at every single retreat. And we like to have at least like 1 to 2. So one of our medical to 2 patients, or sometimes even 1 to 1. So we never kind of go beyond that. And the experience lasts about 4 to 6 hours, and we're there to take care of them. About an hour into the journey, we give them the option to do a booster, which is usually chocolate. Chocolate takes a little longer to get through the system, so it's more of your time release option. And then they come out. We have a light dinner waiting for them. And then some of them are real chatty afterwards. Some of them just want to be on their own. It's totally up to them what they'd like to do, or even if they don't want to join for dinner. They have a good rest. And then the next day, we start the initial integration. We discuss in a group what their experience was like, anything that came up for them. We really encourage journaling. And then day 3, which that would be, we kind of redo everything again, but usually it's a night dose. So then they'll start around 4:00, so that they come out around 8 or 10 p.m.
Beautiful.
Wow. What's the purpose or reasoning behind doing one dose like mid-afternoon and then one more for the evening?
It's just more experience. We want them to have a daytime and a nighttime. We want them to have, and it all depends. So if we have if we have one or more clients that have, like, let's say a flight issue, and they show up really late, then we'll do the night one first, and then we'll do the day one.
Okay.
It's just more than anything. It's just so that they have that experience. Some more things come up when you do a night one. Some people like it more. We really want them to have, in the short amount of time we have with them, we really want them to have as much of an experience as they can.
Yeah. Since you've been facilitating these, and obviously you've seen like several people go through journeys, and I know when it comes to psychedelics, every journey is different, but is there any common threads or things that you feel the psilocybin generally helps people get through or awaken within them? Like, is there just any general things that you can, now having done it for as long as you have, say like, yeah, this form of therapy is really beneficial to a specific person dealing with a specific thing?
Yeah. We've had about 350 people come through, so we've got quite a lot of experience as far as just all walks of life. I'd say it's people being able to work through things, because normally, whether you're going to a therapist or you're trying to work through things on your own, when you think about the event, let's call it like a traumatic event, could be a divorce, could be a job loss, could be a close loved one that's passed away. It brings up all that emotion. As soon as you start thinking about it, you're back to that time, and that makes it really hard to get through. That's when people just get distracted or procrastinate, or just try and push it down in their psyche. Whereas psilocybin, well, psychedelics in general, but psilocybin helps people actually get through it, actually see it from, it could be the worst thing that happened to you, but you can see it from the other person's eyes. Even if like you want them dead and you think terrible things about it, in the psychedelic journey, you can literally see it from their point of view, regardless of how bad the experience was for you. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the number one I could give you. If I only had one option here, it's that it gives you the ability to get through something without the emotions taking over your brain and getting you basically right back to that location. And the brain doesn't really know the difference between it happening again or you just thinking about it. So yeah, that's
beautiful.
Yeah,
and then, I know for me, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, and the other amazing thing is that you remember everything. That's what's truly remarkable, especially when we're asked, why should I do psilocybin? Should I do ketamine? Ketamine is known as the dream drug, so you do forget. And so it's a great experience. It's similar to psilocybin in some ways, but you start forgetting. Whereas psilocybin, you're going to remember the whole experience.
And what you said there about, for me, that's where psychedelics have helped me big time, is being able to see an experience and have, I guess, my ego or the story I've told myself about the experience go offline and see it for, oh, maybe that person was in a lot of pain and they didn't want to hurt me, but they hurt me because of how they were feeling. And you can kind of reframe and then look at it and go, oh, okay, like I can deal with this with a little more ease now because I've changed the story or the way that I'm looking at the problem.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Do you guys do you think there's any utility and value? I've seen some other places popped up and around the world that are now doing like psilocybin and a low dose of MDMA. Is that something you guys ever do, or you think that there's value in?
We haven't done it really purely on legalities. We do have a partner in Europe that is doing exactly that in Prague, and I really support it. I think there's a lot of benefit to it. I'm definitely kind of a natural first, but at the same time, I'm very much what's the best for the patient. And so for some patients at this time, for whatever reason, it's better for them to do, let's say, ketamine before. And I'm always a proponent of that because there's so many reasons. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's just, family or their own comfort level. I want people to be met where they're at, regardless of what's out there. So I hope that kind of helps a little bit.
For sure. For you, a question I had was, obviously getting into this space, you must have had some of your own experiences. And is there any story or anything you could talk about when it came to like your own work with medicine that was a profound shift for you in your own life?
You know, it was interesting. Anytime I would try mushrooms, and it was definitely kind of, less on the medical side of the spectrum and more, with friends and bush parties, as we call them in Collingwood, it would be that after the experience, I would be so awakened to, pardon the pun, but like to, wow, I've got to do that more often. It's something that, it would never be even more than like once a year, once every couple of years, but I would always the next day have this like lightened load, so to speak, and I'd just be more attuned. That really turned me on. My former partner, we were going through a cancer journey. She was diagnosed at 21, and we went down to Costa Rica to be in the blue zones to try and basically, bring her body up to strength before any chemo or any radiation. And so there was cacao ceremonies, psychedelic ceremonies, a lot of natural methods used, and a lot of providers from the US, UK, everywhere were down there. And that, I think that was probably the biggest part of my journey, really respecting it in a wholesome way, where it wasn't just for people with mental issues. It was, I started seeing the body as a holistic system, but also that mushrooms could help you, even if it was something that's, so to speak, a body issue. So it's like psychedelics are good for things beyond just, let's say, depression or anxiety, although they're amazing for those things. They can really help people kind of get out of the fog that might be causing them other issues in their life, whether it's body or mind. So it was a few things, but it was definitely the going through the whole cancer journey with my partner, Tina, that really made me think, wow, there's something.
Mm-hmm. And I really like what you just kind of touched on there. You said psychedelics and psilocybin specifically isn't just for people that are struggling, whether it's mentally or physically. To this point in my life, I would say I've had a pretty easy go in terms of there hasn't been too many traumatic events in my life, but and I say that I don't think I'm somebody that really struggles with ongoing mental health issues, and I feel very lucky for that. But my experiences with psychedelics have, even with the absence of not having mental health issues that are ongoing, have really helped me a lot in life and have allowed me to look at life differently, and then really remember, we talk about this all the time, but they allow you to remember what's truly important, because sometimes in that, the day-to-day muck, whether it's business or friends, family, you're stressed out about certain things, and it's very easy to forget what truly matters in life. And that's the biggest thing for me, is like anytime I do a psychedelic experience, it's just that remembering of what's truly important.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason, is that, you feel hyper connected. You realize that you're part of something bigger. One kind of premonition I had was that we're sold this whole individual, capitalistic kind of model of society, and it is to a certain extent, but at the same time, through one journey, I really realized that we are part of one organism, even though we're not physically connected. That, I'm part of the fingernail of the human, and you guys are part of the eyeball, and when I thought of that as us on Earth, that we're all, let's say, 8 billion cells of one human organism, that was a huge premonition or thought that I had in one of my journeys, and it really helped me see us as that. Even though we're promoted a divided, individualistic lifestyle, it made me realize that we are connected, even if it's not physically. We are kind of all one organism. So that was a big one for me.
Yeah, I think like what you just said, and then what I was saying before that, both those things combined, I think like a message that people can take away from that is that, this is just my opinion, I know a lot of people would agree, some people would disagree. I think psychedelics, when they're done in the right environment and you have people facilitating these experiences that are a professional and they know what they're doing and they take it very serious, that they can truly benefit just about anybody's life. And the narrative of, I feel like it used to kind of be like, oh, if you're struggling with something, it might be something that you should consider. But I think maybe not across the board, because nothing can be across the board, but 99% of people could probably benefit if they do a psychedelic experience. And like I said, it's in the right environment with the right people.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, I mean, we really want it to be the first option for people, whether they take it or not. We really see a world that we want to live in where it is the first option. So instead of going straight to, high-powered antidepressants, you do have the option to try psychedelics, on your journey. And that's really what we're hoping to accomplish with Wake.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful mission, because I think when I look out at, like, we just spent 6-7 months in Guatemala and now we've come back here, and just day to day you see so many people that just look like they've lost their life force. They look like they've lost that vitality, that spark for life. And generally when someone's feeling low or they're feeling uneasy and they're mentally in a bad place, they go to the doctor and the first thing is, all right, take this SSRI, which I know in use cases it can be helpful, but a lot of the time it just numbs people out and it puts them further down that spiral of feeling stuck. And I don't think any human being should feel stuck. We have an ability to create such a beautiful dream, such a beautiful life here. And the way the current paradigm and model is going, it's just leading people further away from themselves. Whereas, like, they could come down to you, for example, and instead of being led further away, reconnect within and figure out what's actually going on.
100%. And we see it a lot. It's a paradigm shift that's taking a little while. But it's happening. Now we have New Mexico has just approved medical psilocybin, medical psychedelics. That's the third state in the U.S. So it, slowly but surely, but it is speeding up, that we are seeing changes in our neck of the woods. That's going to enable more and more access. So I'm very hopeful for the future where people do have more access.
When it comes to these therapies and actually scaling them out properly, like, what is the strategy, or what do you think the game plan has to be in order to make psilocybin therapy or other modalities that are similar available to the general public and still have it function in a high level way for them?
Yeah, a couple things. And that was partly why we did the ESPN documentary, was that we really wanted to bring it to Joe Sixpack, so to speak. We really wanted to show that it works and it's not just all hippies getting high in the jungle, and that there's medical backing for it and that there's medical on site. Group therapy is like something that's really important, that needs to be kind of normalized, that is not, we're not used to having group therapy in our world. We're kind of more used to having one-on-one, go see the doctor, and then in 20 minutes you're out of the doctor's office and you've got a piece of paper to go get some medication. So it's a different modality as far as how we do the work. We need to normalize group therapy, and that's going to be a bit of a change of the traditional doctor's office. The billing codes, so how doctors actually get paid, is going to have to be modified so that you do have the ability to have somebody effectively in your office for 6 hours. We're not used to that. We've never seen that outside of the hospital, basically, but we're going to need that. So it's the public perception, the Overton window, so to speak. How do we change that? We're doing that with documentaries. We're doing that with research. It's kind of my techie side coming out, where I want to bring all of this technology to the space, but it's also so that we can gain the data and we can provide it to researchers and providers all over the world, so that they feel comfortable and they can see how, let's say, the brainwaves change pre and post, and how the sleep changes, the activity changes. We use all of the same scales for depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress as a psychiatrist or a doctor does. So we use the exact same clinically validated tools, so that if you're a researcher or a medical provider and you want to see somebody's pre and post, it's all things that you're used to seeing in the doctor's office and the psychologist or psychiatrist's office. So I think it's standardizing what's used at retreats, and clinical retreats is what we call ours, but retreats in general. If we can standardize that we're going to use a lot of the same forms and a lot of the same tools that medical uses, that's going to bring, everything together. And then the billing codes, basically, it's like, we need to make sure that this isn't just a cash pay for people who can afford it opportunity. We want people to be able to experience this and have it covered by their insurers, whether they're private or public. And the only way that that's going to happen is for actual research to take place. So there's a few things. I mean, it's public perception, and then it's insurers covering it. Those two, we're kind of on a mission to try and help both. We're doing research in a different way than is typically done. They call it RCT, which is randomized clinical trials. That's usually very expensive, and usually a low number of people come through, an N they call it. We are looking to do the work. So we'll do our clinical retreats. We monitor everybody's well-being prior to arriving, obviously while they're there, and then post. And that is tracking everything from their blood pressure, their heart rate, their EEG, ECG, and then the patient-reported outcomes, which is basically clinically validated tools to judge how their depression is, their anxiety is. That is all going into a research data set that we can then do a retrospective study on. And I know this might just be all kind of like a bunch of like gobbledygook, but basically the way we're doing it is, unless you have millions to put at a clinical trial, which is usually a patented drug, the only way that we've seen to be able to do studies and do research around the clients that come in is to do it this way, where we're basically doing a retrospective clinical trial rather than a prior randomized clinical trial. So we're using all the same tools, all the same forms, but this will allow us to show that things are working on a retrospective basis. And so we're working with a number of universities in the US. This allows us to basically do clinical trials open-ended. So we could have thousands of people into our trial, and we can publish this data, and this data can hopefully inform researchers, medical providers to be more comfortable prescribing or recommending psychedelics to their clients, their guests, because these studies have been done. So I know it's lots of, I kind of went off piece there, and really, but I really want you to understand that the way that we're going to make this accessible is for people to be more trusting, and they're going to only trust it if their doctors and nurses and care providers recommend it. And the only way that they're going to recommend it is if there's studies done on it. And the only way we're going to get studies is if, people in the space do the work without the necessity of an actual clinical patent being involved.
One thing that I wanted to ask you, just based off of what you were just saying, was because I think, for a lot of people and for myself too, because I don't understand the science behind it. And clearly you're somebody who's like looked into the research and actively pursuing it. Can you explain in like layman's terms how psilocybin is actually able to help somebody that may be struggling with depression or any other sort of mental health issue?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot we don't know. I'll try not to make it a long answer, but so we have multiple compounds in the biomass of mushrooms, and psilocybin, psilocin are like, obviously the most popular ones. We know that psilocybin specifically is incredibly powerful because even when we make it synthetically, it works. So even when we take the one compound out of the biomass and we make it synthetically with benzene, it's still got an amazing impact on people with depression, anxiety. So how does it do that? A lot of it comes down to the default mode network. It's a power save, so to speak, for our brain, where it's really trying to save energy for the future, for the body, so that in case something happens, a tiger jumps out, or we need energy, we've got that glucose, we've got that energy, and we haven't wasted it on unnecessary brain cycles. So the brain's obviously trying to help itself help us. But what it's not, it's basically not helping us. It's putting us into this loop this depressive loop, usually, where people are having the same thoughts, and that's why they do the same reactions to, let's say, stress or anxiety. They'll go drink, or they'll go shopping, or whatever their thing or things are. It's this default mode network in action that is saving us energy by basically putting us into a loop. And that loop is saving us energy. But unfortunately, when you have a thought, you're going to, let's say, somebody cuts you off in traffic, you're instantly going to kind of a negative loop, because that's the default mode network, just thinking, everybody's an ass, nobody cares about me, woe is me, basically. So we know that psychedelics, not just psilocybin, but psychedelics, it shuts that off. It shuts off the default mode network, so that we now have a clean mountain, so to speak, of where we can ski anywhere. We're not skiing just in the tracks. And that's a huge benefit. And then that parlays, or at least combines with, the ability for us to think through an issue or issues in our past that are very traumatic, that are maybe the core issue for us. We can think that through. We can see it from the other person's perspective. We've had some people that have suffered some terrible traumas in their life, and when they come out of their psychedelic dose, they're truly able to understand where that other person was coming from, even if it's something absolutely horrible. So when you combine the two, default mode network is shut off, and the ability for you to experience previous traumas and not have them come up as if they're happening again, those two are the most powerful pieces or components that psychedelics provide. There's also neurogenesis and neuroplasticity that's going on. And so those continue after the psychedelic dose and give you the ability to learn new things, for those things to be remembered easier. We're in a much healthier kind of stasis. So we're eating better, we're more active. So those things are helping us as well. So it's not just one thing, but what we do know is it's very much focused in on the default mode network, and that helps us quite a bit.
And so when you, speaking about the default mode network, and you said, re-experiencing that trauma or whatever it was that happened and looking at it from a new lens, in a way, are you kind of updating the software in the sense of your brain is able to now predict a new reality, not predict, if the brain is constantly predicting what's going to happen next, and that story's always been, oh, that happened to me, so this is going to be shitty and that person's going to be bad. Do you think when that network eases up, you're able to now predict a new future?
I mean, I think you're definitely open to it. You're much more open to it. You're less. I've heard it explained a few different ways, that it takes the edges off, that it gives you an extra second or two to make a decision, rather than just being right to usually a negative reaction. You have an extra second or two to make your decision, to come up with it. Yeah, it's definitely an upgrade. It's a defrag. It's an upgrade. People come out of it in a much calmer, less anxiety, less anxious feeling of the world, and they're much more open to different ways of looking at things. So it's kind of like you've always been playing, the board game from this point of view, and now you can see under the chessboard, from the other side, from above. It really helps in a lot of ways that maybe people haven't particularly looked at before.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we're going to be respectful of your time today, Nick, but we appreciate you coming on the podcast.
I had one more question.
Yeah, one more
question.
Okay.
One more thing that I had to ask
For sure
is, how did you end up with Richard Branson and doing things on his island? Was this to do in the psilocybin space? Was this more to do with the functional stuff, or what's going on there? Because I just thought that was cool. I've always thought Richard Branson is just like a bigger than life kind of cool fellow.
He is both of those things. My co-founder is good friends with the family, and it was a lot of back and forth and a lot of work to do our first first event on Necker Island, which was last September. We brought together a remarkable group for the Mystic Summit with a good friend, Jeremy Gardner. And then we were lucky enough to go back there just a few weeks ago now. And Richard's really been a strong proponent for drug policy, for a sensible drug policy, for re-examining why we have these kind of archaic drug laws around the world. And he's brought together everybody you could think of for world peace, for ocean conservation recently, and then obviously for ours was around mental health and smart drug policy, and really helping people through their journeys. So he's I'm so honored that we've been able to do the work on Necker Island with his fabulous team, and we're looking forward to doing more. And they say don't meet your idols or your legends, you're going to be let down, but no way. I mean, the guy is a beast. He's just an amazing human that can kick anybody's ass at kind of anything. So whether it's tennis or cycling or running, he's almost superhuman. Wonderful guy.
Amazing. And it just fires me up because when you get people like that involved with big hearts and obviously a big network and wealth, that's when I think you can really change the game. I think people like that can change things quicker than even politicians can, because people know who he is, they respect him, and he obviously has influence and the network to make something happen. So when I saw you guys with him, I was like, that's just a beautiful step in making this all happen.
Yeah, it's badass.
Yeah, one step of many, but really thankful for him and his support.
Yeah. Well, Nick, if you could tell our audience kind of where they could find you, your social media, anywhere where they could learn more about your retreats and the work you're doing, if you could let them know, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. We're at wake.net on the internet and wake.well on Instagram. And you can hit me up anytime, nick@wake.net.
Beautiful. Thank you, bro. That was awesome.
Yeah,
Luke,
we appreciate
Jake,
your time, man. And hey,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, fellas.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll see you in Guatemala one day.
That sounds good. We'll definitely have to cross paths.
The Primitive Patterns Podcast. It's time to live your mystery.